sometimes the hardest part about building a business isn't the strategy or the systems. It's learning to trust yourself, listeners. That quiet inner version, or let's say the inner self within you, says that, oh my God, this feels right for me. Even when logically it may seem counterintuitive or contradicting to you. So, today we are going to explore what exactly it really means to trust your intuition in a world that celebrates, honors the analytics and the hustle. So, my guest knows this very deeply, listeners. She's an engineer and an MBA who once lived on this dating hamster wheel only to rewire her entire attachment style. I meet her husband after dreaming about him 3 weeks before they met, and her story blends the practical with the mystical, the structured with the soulful. And together we are going to ask, what if intuition isn't the opposite of logic, but it's better half or it's missing half? So listeners, meet my lovely guest, Violet Lange. Violet, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really honored to have you here with us.
Thank you so much, Sana. I'm really excited about this topic.
Yeah, I know. Before we talk about the topic, Violet, I mean, I don't think it's so common, but it's like it's definitely dream come true, I must say. I'm really, really like feeling very happy. So yeah, um, like before we begin understanding your journey, let's start with something fundamental here. Um, how do you personally define intuition? When it comes to decision making in business, like is it like a gut feeling, or is it like this a nudge, or like a learning skill which comes through experience, or it is something spiritual?
I think it depends on the person. I think our intuition speaks to us in different ways. And for some people, it will be a gut sense. For other people, it will be a feeling of everything coming together, or everything just feeling more clear and more beautiful. Some people say that our intuition speaks to us with certain elements. So the air element would be a sense of beauty, or the fire element would be a sense of, oh, I want to take action on this one thing. I feel really sparked by that. And I think intuition is a blend of lived experience that has helped own our intuition. And I also think it's something that's unique to our soul's destiny, because I do believe that we have a path that we are meant to walk and lessons we're meant to learn. And so we have our past providing experience, then we have our future self that's guiding us, and those intersect in those moments where we make decisions to change the course of our life and our business.
I think that's such a very crystal clear explanation and like definition of intuition. And you know, let me because I'm really curious to understand this from the lens of experience. Like if it is shaped by our experience or honed by our lived experiences, how do we know that we are not just repeating old emotional patterns? For example, let's say in a business, when we're taking a very critical decision, um, I would say that, okay, something which is going wrong. I have seen this. I have gone through this, similar kind of experience before, and things didn't go right after this. So let me just not take any decision right now. So, how would you, how do we know that, that is intuition, not a fear or like a repeating pattern?
That's a great question. I think when we make a pattern shift, we're getting new data. So if you see a situation that didn't go well in the past and you choose to not enter that situation in the future, you're making a different decision. And as that situation evolves, you'll get a chance to confirm, oh, my intuition was correct. I saved myself so much time by not going into that. Or, maybe I missed out on something, or maybe it just wasn't right timing. And so I think that sometimes our intuition is speaking to us, and it's about shifting our perspective and shifting our actions, and less about like a category of things that are right or wrong for us. I will say that sometimes our intuition is sneaky, especially when it comes to relationships, professional relationships or otherwise. because something might feel good in our body, but it may actually not be the right thing for us. And our intuition is not always about what feels good. It's about shifting and changing patterns and honoring our truth. And to me, there's a sense of relief, like, okay, this is the right action.
Makes sense. Interesting paradox, like it's almost like intuition matures as we do. And I would like to go to the dream part here, because the question which I'm going to ask is kind of, something derived from my own experience, and I think in your journey as well, especially when you met your husband after your dream. 3 weeks later, you met him. Dreams, like I have dreamed, and this has happened like twice or thrice, where I've dreamed, let's say, around an element like fire or water or flood, or let's say like a storm. And maybe a week later, or maybe in fact the same day, within like a span of 6 to 7 hours, it has happened. So, are dreams like these type of intuitive signals, or they are like projections of our unconscious or subconscious minds? Like if we try to decode it scientifically here.
I think that our dreams can be premonitions and invitations into something that will happen. I think our intuition can use dreams, it can use symbols. To me, intuition is actually logical, but it's the type of logic that goes beyond just the analytical and just the five senses. So it's what we can't necessarily see or taste or touch or hear or smell, but that still makes sense. And one of my spiritual teachers used to say that as humans, we're really only tapping into like 10% of the available energy and information out there, and maybe even less. And I think dreams are a way for us to tap into that bigger sense of knowing, which is kind of what intuition is, like your unfelt sense of knowing. And to me, some of our dreams might be what we would call like a stress dream. And those are more of the beta brainwave, where it's like really active and we have old fears coming up. And I do think our brain sometimes purges unnecessary information that way. But the other type of dream you're talking about, where you have a clear signal about an element or a storm or something, and then it happens, it's your soul's way of preparing you for what's coming.
Wow. Well, that is fascinating. I've always found this fascinating, and in fact, gut feeling also. It's not just restricted to business, but being a part of our life. Sometimes it could be like a signal, or so for example, let me give you an example here, Violet, that if a glass has broken, let's say I've broken a glass or a cup, there have been like twice or thrice that, and I'm not taking this towards the angle of superstition here, but this is something completely of my own personal experience to all the listeners. Like the glass got broken, and immediately, or maybe the next day or the following 3-4 days, something bad had happened. It's either in my job, like I got laid off after that, and there was another incident, when some kind of a very heated argument happened with my parents, and things did not go well after that. So from that time onwards, I have been personally very, very sensitive towards tumbling glass, because I don't want anything bad to happen. But then there have been many situations where I have had this gut feeling, a very bad gut feeling, and something which is not favorable has happened. That could be in the business or maybe in personal life. So once again, coming back, how can we have that control over that fear, or do we have to like be very careful, be like in this protection that no, I do not want to take any chances. So I do not want to take any huge risks in there, because risk taking often is like rewarded in business or in your career. So what's your thought on this, Violet?
That's a wonderful example and story, I believe, of pausing and not taking as many risks. And in this bravado, highly masculine culture, oftentimes in business, we're driving more and spending more and doing more. Like you said, when that's celebrated, we may shame ourselves for slowing down. But I think there's a lot of wisdom there because our business moves in cycles. I know no one wants to admit that. They just want growth continually. But there are cycles. And I've also had experiences with glass breaking. And to me, it's always a sign of there's chaos, like there's something chaos in the system. And whether that's going to be favorable or not favorable, it's a time to pause and reflect and really be aware. And I think that's important in our business to not just rush into things or to stay attached to a plan because of sunk costs or to save face. There's been a few times just even in the last year where my intuition has said no about something, but I went forward and said yes because I thought, well, I want to help this person, or I could use the money, or this would be the most loving thing to do. And the situation imploded later, and I regretted not following my intuition.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you on this, Violet. And I think, irrespective of what people would think, I think these nudges, they give us that, signal that just be careful, like tread carefully. Because once again, people would assume that as a founder, as a leader, or as a strong person, you should be having that, hunger of risk taking. But yes, sometimes it is better to be careful and, very calculative in terms of how you would take the risk. Would you take it or not? And I absolutely agree with you. Like, I would also trust on my intuition because many times I haven't, and I had to actually had some difficult experiences, but they have really, really taught me very important life lessons.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And also every culture has a different view on intuition. I remember hearing that like in Japan, people have a business meal and if it doesn't digest well, then they have different thoughts about the engagement or about the relationship, which I always thought was really cool. And a lot of financial people who are working with the stock markets are highly intuitive and using their intuition.
Exactly. That's such a brilliant example. Even in India as well. So if you come to India, if you visit the local shopkeepers, so the first earning of the day, they'll always devote it to goddess Lakshmi. She Lakshmi and then goddess Ganesha as well. Lord Ganesha. Because both of these deities, they represent wealth and auspicious, beginning. So the first earning of the day is being devoted to them. And then they start with this. So it's like a ritual that they do. If they're not able to do it, that kind of, makes them kind of, discomfort or then they do not feel motivated to continue throughout the day. And even in stocks also, we have seen.
And in some ways, a ritual like that is the same as a sports performance. People have certain activities they do on a consistent basis, whether it's taking supplements or going to exercise. So to me, that ritual is just harnessing energy and also creating reciprocity, the give and flow to make those offerings. And I think that's really beautiful.
It is. It is like before you are going to a meeting or giving a prep talk or any kind of, you're going on stage, you just do a quick workout or do some kind of, like shaking yourself and doing something that gives you that energy, that trust. So yeah, that makes sense. And you mentioned something about the masculine energy. Now, you also often talk about feminine energy as source of power and connection. I love that idea. But in business, it can clash with the traditional structures, which are actually built on absolute control, power, competition. How do you see feminine energy fitting into the high stakes environment here?
I think it depends on the company and depends on the players at the table. But I think feminine wisdom brings a lot of power and also brings a lot of dynamic energy that can help shift things. And there's a magnetism, right? Like the creation energy and the magnetic energy. And if there is a structure that is focused on repressing feminine energy, you can only speak your truth to power so many times before it becomes re-triggering and re-traumatizing, and your energy is best served in a different pursuit. I have seen when I was in business, when I made very clear and passionate statements. For instance, there was a meeting that my boss did not invite me to, although everyone else on the leadership team was there. And he said, well, I can't add you now because the meal has already been paid for and set. And I said, you're going to keep one of your leadership team members from being there because of a chicken sandwich? And he said, well, I mean, maybe I could change it. And so I think sometimes it's about just being a mirror and reflecting. And it doesn't always have to be through destruction or through passion, but holding our ground.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree. And before we wrap up, do you ever worry that talking about energy, or talking about the more human sides here, whether it's pleasure or your personal life, or this, or even talking about intuition, makes people, especially in corporate places, dismiss your credibility?
I have noticed there are people who distance themselves from what I'm sharing because it feels too confronting from them. But I've realized I'm not here to conform to everyone. I'm here to create change and awaken people into new ways of thinking. And so if some people don't resonate with my message or discredit me in some way, then that's their own journey. There was a pivotal moment where I was starting to become an entrepreneur, and I received one of the magazines from my alumni network of my business school. And one of the quotes in there was from a very powerful executive. And he said, nothing of significance in my life was ever anything I had planned. And it reinforced to me that even the most powerful people are using their intuition to get where they are and are using their intuition to create the things that they want. And it gave me a lot of permission to follow my own truth and to let people who don't want to do that do their own thing. But I don't want them to shame me, or I don't need to take on their shame because I'm choosing to do it differently. One of my first bosses said, you are the most non-linear thinker I've ever worked with. And he didn't really mean it as a compliment, although now that I look on it, I think it's a compliment. I'm like, yes, that's why I'm an entrepreneur and a trailblazer and all of these things. But I think it's important to find places where you feel you belong, and then places where you don't belong and you can push against things a little bit more. But those safe places where you do feel like you belong, groups or individual relationships, so that you can resource yourself as you're going into places that may not see things the way you say things.
Love it. I love the boldness in there, Violet. Absolutely, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, if you're loving to do this, and if it is working out, it is helping in productivity, doesn't make sense that, who would like it or who wouldn't. So, totally agree with you. So, Violet, before we wrap this conversation up, if listeners, they would like to connect with you and would like to share their thoughts after this conversation, or they would like to check out your resources, what would be the best way?
They can go to my website. It's violetlange.com. I'm also very hands-on and personable. So they can just email me, violet@violetlange.com, or find me on Facebook under Violet Lange. And not this year, but last year, I led a program called Instinct and Intuition, and it was all about helping women deepen their instinct and their intuition in all the realms of their life. So I love this topic.
Beautiful, beautiful. Listeners, I'll have all the details in the show notes. So check out the resources, connect with Violet, and refer to the show notes along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And before I close this conversation, whether we are building a business or we are building a life, the real success, maybe, it doesn't lie in predicting the future, but in staying present enough to hear the quiet truth inside us. So, Violet, thank you so much for this such an inspiring and bold take on intuition. Loved it.
Thank you so much, Sana.
Yeah, thank you so much, Violet. And thank you to all the listeners for devoting your time to listen to this episode on Cosmic Confluence. Do share your thoughts in the comments section. Subscribe to us. Leave us a review. That really, really helps me showing up for all of you. And until next time, this is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.